Are you tired of feeling bloated after every single bite? In today's video, I'm going to be giving you 5 reasons why you could be bloated, and I'm going to give you tips so you can finally find relief. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Nicole, and I'm a registered dietitian. I want to translate nutrition research to you in a very easy to understand manner so that you can actually apply it to your everyday life. Okay, so what is bloating? Bloating is essentially that feeling that you feel that makes you very uncomfortable, and it can often coincide with like abdominal pain and a feeling of like pressure. Bloating can happen for a wide variety of reasons, and it's not always correlated with food. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you the 5 most common ones, so stick around to the end so that you know the most common ones. So cruciferous vegetables are a class of vegetables that consist of Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, it has cabbage, and kale, among other vegetables. So these are very nutritious for you. However, you can run into trouble depending on how you use them, the frequency that you have them, and the quantity that you have them as well. Essentially, all these different vegetables have sulfur compounds and raffinose, which can cause a lot of gas to build up, which can contribute to bloating. If your bloating is caused by cruciferous vegetables, what I typically would recommend is to take at least a week worth of your food intake and just kind of look at it and see how often that you have these different vegetables. First, look at the frequency of your intake. So are you having these vegetables every single day? Are you having them a couple times of the week? So gather some information and see what that looks like. Outside of the frequency that you have these different cruciferous vegetables, I would encourage you to look at your quantity. So are you having a handful worth in a sitting? Are you having like a whole bowl's worth at a sitting? And the last thing that I would like you to look at, besides the frequency and the quantity in a given sitting, is to assess how you are actually utilizing those cruciferous vegetables. Are you having these often in raw form? Like if you're having, say, cauliflower and you're dipping it in like some sort of dip that you're having it with. Are you having it raw? Are you cooking it? And all of those are really important because depending on how you cook them, depending on the quantity that you're having in a sitting and the frequency throughout a given week, because this is related to the amount of gas that's building up from these different vegetables. If you're having the cruciferous vegetables every single day and you're having these large quantities, that's a lot of gas to build up, and so I can understand if you're having it in a large amount, right, all throughout the week or multiple times throughout a day, that gas can build up, can make you feel really bloated and very uncomfortable. So after you basically assess that, what I would suggest is to try and cut it down a little bit and see if your symptoms subside. So maybe try to reduce the amount that you're consuming to maybe 2 to 3 times a week. So reduce the frequency and then reduce the quantity that you're having in one sitting. Reduce that to at least half of what you had before and see if your symptoms are more resolved. And lastly, the other thing that you can do to try to note and see if your bloating it has some relief is to, instead of say eating something raw, like eating those cruciferous vegetables raw, try cooking them, because often when you cook them, it's much easier to digest. Do a saute with, say, kale and tomatoes and mushrooms instead of having this giant raw salad. So try those different techniques and see if your bloating improves. And the second reason you can be having a lot of bloating issues is because it could be related to the motility, which is basically the movement of your digestive tract. So our digestive tract is a muscle, okay? There are contractions that happen to push food throughout our body. Our migrating motor complex, or MMC for short, that essentially initiates those contractions to help to push food throughout the whole digestive tract to eventually go to our colon, which is also referred to as our large intestine, and then essentially after that it's going to be excreted as waste. This process is initiated, it's very naturally initiated, by our MMC when we space meals out throughout the day. This is really important because if your MMC is slowed down, that significantly slows down digestion, which can contribute to constipation, it can contribute to bloating, poor digestion in and of itself, and then it can also be contributed to different gut conditions like I see in my practice, like SIBO, for instance. Now, if motility is your issue, you're going to have to really address what's going on with the motility, so I'll try to be very brief with this, but these are some tips that can help to have that natural progression of digestion. First, like I mentioned earlier, spacing meals is really important. So spacing your meals about 3 to 4 hours apart is going to be helpful to naturally initiate that movement of your MMC. Outside of that, stress is really important to manage. I cannot stress to manage your stress enough. Stress management is really key because when we feel really stressed out, that kicks our body into that fight or flight scenario, the fight or flight response. Essentially what that means is it only needs to prioritize things that are crucial for functioning at that point in time. So what happens is that sadly, unfortunately, digestion is not one of those immediate survival functions. So digestion will actually slow down. That's not something that's going to be prioritized. Instead of that, rather, our body would more so prioritize being able to focus and do whatever it thinks it needs to do because it's in the survival standpoint. So instead of being in that rest, being able to rest and digest is what I like to refer to it as. It's not in that. It's stressed out, so our body is not trying to digest things well, so things are very slowed down. So it's really, really important to manage your stress. Another thing that's really important when we are talking about the MMC and just digestion and gut health in particular is going to be to make sure that you're consuming food that is safe. Another thing that's really important and what I would encourage you to continue to practice is eating food in a very safe manner. So practicing all the food safety guidelines, keeping cold food cold and hot food hot, making sure that you're not eating food that is in like the temperature danger zone and that is safe and that has been handled properly so that you don't contract like a foodborne illness. If you do have a foodborne illness, that can often damage the MMC and that can disrupt that communication, can slow down digestive. You can often have motility issues because of that. Another thing that's really important in general when we are trying to have a meal is to be very mindful and present in that meal. So making sure that we are enjoying our food, we are taking the time that we need to actually sit down, have the meal, to properly chew and digest that food is really crucial. And that is important for digestion and it will help to keep the motility the way that it should be. Hydration is very important too. So making sure that we are properly hydrated so that things are moving properly throughout our body and that our body has enough lubrication, if you will, for saliva to happen so that digestion occurs as it should. If you want more helpful tips on gut health, please hit that thumbs up button so that I know you want to see more videos like this on gut health. A third reason why you might be bloating, and that is very common, is that you could be under eating. So if you're under eating, that means that you're not providing your body enough nutrients to support its function. When you choose to eat substantially less than what your body needs, your body has to figure out where to allocate those resources. Our body essentially does that as a cost analysis, okay? I'm very business minded, so essentially, right, in a cost analysis, okay, we're gonna try and figure out what is the good or the best ROI for where we're putting our money, right? So what are the pros and cons of doing that? And what's gonna give us the best outcome? Now the body's essentially doing that, but instead of money, it's fuel, right? So where should we put this fuel to help? So the body will essentially do that for functions like breathing, like our heart rate. It'll do that for our brain. Our brain has to function. It'll do all of those things first and allocate resources there because, right, that's going to help us, our body, to function well and better and survive. Theoretically, that would be a better ROI to put it there first, then to help with the digestion and going smoothly. So it'll prioritize that first. Undereating will slow down digestion and can cause a lot of these issues like bloating. What you have to do to combat this is you have to eat properly for what your body needs. Everyone's nutrient needs are going to be different. If you're not fueling enough, right, something that I commonly see with clients is sometimes they'll come to me and say they have all these gut issues, and then what will happen is we'll take a look at their diet and maybe they're skipping meals and maybe they only have like 1 or 2 meals a day, and then their calorie amount, right, their energy intake is very, very small. So what I would suggest for you to do is to increase nutrients, essentially. So increase your calories, increase that, because if you're under fueling, you're not consuming enough for what your body needs to properly function. So you have to increase those calories. And not just calories, of course, calories is going to be, total energy expenditure, but you need to make sure that you're having balanced meals throughout the day and try and space those out too. Be sure to comment any questions that you have below about gut health and I will do a future video on that for you. Fourth common reason for bloating is that you're probably constipated. Constipation is a very common source of bloating, so you gotta get down to the root issue of why you're constipated. Constipation is typically defined as like having irregular bowel movements where things are very difficult to pass, so it's not relatively easy, as well as having like kind of like hard pellet-like stools. If you haven't ever done this before, I would definitely encourage you to look at what your stools actually look like and to see if it's actually constipation. Other reasons that you could be constipated could be just irregular eating habits. It could be because you don't have enough like sufficient mineral intake. It could be because you have a lack of fiber or your hydration is really off. So it's really important to get down to the root of what's causing your constipation. Now the fifth reason that you might be bloated is because you might not have proper enzyme sufficiency in your body. All right, so you could have like an enzyme insufficiency. Okay, so enzymes are naturally occurring in our body and they help us to digest food. So when we have insufficient enzyme quantities in our body, that essentially means that some food is not getting properly broken down or digested and it's not being absorbed well. And because of those two things, because it's maldigested or malabsorbed, right, as it continues down our digestive tract, because it's not being absorbed correctly, it can cause abdominal pain, gas, bloating, etc. So that might be your issue of what's going on. There's a lot of different enzymes in our body to help us to break down food. I'm going to basically just kind of list a couple of different ones that are more common, just kind of generalized ones. So there's amylase that digests carbohydrates in the body. There is lactase that digests lactose in the body. There is maltase to digest maltose in the body. There's lipase to digest different fats in the body. Proteases or proteases to digest proteins in the body. And there is sucrase to digest sucrose in the body. So there's a lot of different enzymes to help us digest food. And you might have a particular one is either very low or just slightly just not enough to actually properly digest food correctly. This is where working with a dietitian like myself is really helpful, and working not only with a dietitian but with a gastrointestinal doctor together, so that you guys can get down to the root of what's happening in your body. If you are looking for a dietitian to help you with your gut health, I would love to help you out. You can check out the description below, and I will put my email there as well as my website, so you can fill out either the contact form or shoot me an email and we can have a conversation together. Be sure to click on the next video to watch until I see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on another video.